All right, today we are diving into a theory that, well, it goes way beyond quantum physics. It's this idea of a totally new, fundamental layer to reality. Now, it's going to sound a little strange at first, I'll admit, but it claims to solve some of the biggest puzzles in all of science. So let's get into it.
Yep, you read that right. The whole theory hinges on this one wild idea. It asks you to imagine that at the most basic, fundamental level, everything, and I mean everything, from a tiny quark to a giant galaxy, is made of these little energetic snakes. It's a weird concept for sure, but you gotta stick with it, because it's the key to understanding everything else that's coming.
So where does an idea like this even come from?
Well, the theory starts by saying our standard model of physics, with quarks and leptons being the smallest things, it's just not the whole story. It's suggesting there's another layer, a much deeper level, that we've just been missing this whole time.
According to this theory, the real building blocks of everything are these things called short elastic waves. Now, to help us wrap our heads around that, the theory uses the analogy of snakes. So just picture it. Each little snake is a unit of energy, and they are what truly make up our entire universe.
Okay, so this brings us to one of the biggest head-scratchers in physics, wave-particle duality. How can something be a particle and a wave? Well, this theory offers a pretty simple picture. A particle, which is what we see at the quantum level, is just a coiled-up tangle of these snakes. But when that tangle unwinds and stretches out into a line, it acts like a wave. And that, the theory claims, is the real secret behind the famous double-slit experiment.
So here's the real test, right? If this whole snake idea actually holds up, it should be able to explain things that our current physics really struggles with. Let's see how it does when we apply it to some of the biggest paradoxes out there.
First up, the Large Hadron Collider. You've got scientists smashing these tiny, tiny particles, like protons, together at incredible speeds. And what comes out? A whole shower of particles that are way bigger and more massive. I mean, it's like crashing two golf balls together and getting a bunch of bowling balls out of the explosion. How in the world is that possible?
Well, the theory gives a surprisingly simple answer. It says the energy beams they use to speed up the particles, they're also made of snakes, but they're in that straight, linear, wave-like state. So during the collision, it's not just the two particle tangles that smash together. It's also all those billions of extra linear snakes from the beam that get all tangled up, and that's what forms those new massive particles we see. More snakes equals a bigger tangle. Simple.
All right, but what about the big one, quantum entanglement? Einstein famously called it spooky action at a distance. You can have two particles on opposite sides of the universe, and whatever you do to one, the other one instantly knows and reacts. Nothing's supposed to go faster than light, so how do they do it?
This is where that whole beyond quantum level really comes into play. The theory says that, yeah, in our world, the particles look like they're miles and miles apart, but at the fundamental snake level, they're actually connected by one single continuous snake. In that dimension, concepts like distance and time and speed they don't even apply. So there's no signal being sent faster than light, because in a very real sense, they're still part of the exact same thing.
Now, this theory doesn't just stop with these huge cosmic riddles. It also claims to totally redefine something we use every single day, electricity. And the core idea? It's exactly the same. Electricity is just another way these fundamental snakes behave. Okay, think about one of those old-school electrostatic machines from a science class. The kind that makes your hair stand on end? It only creates a really big, dramatic spark when it has those metal spheres on the ends. Ever wonder why? The theory breaks it down. First, the rotating disks untangle snakes, turning them into a linear flow, static electricity. Then the spheres provide the perfect shape for all those snakes to coil back up into huge tangles. And finally, when those massive new tangles collide, bam, you get that powerful spark. So the really big takeaway here is that geometry, the shape of things, is incredibly important. A specific shape, like a sphere or a dome, seems to be the key to turning that linear snake energy back into those coiled-up tangles that store and accumulate energy. And this one idea, that domes can collect energy, well, that's the bridge to the most unbelievable part of this whole theory. All right, you might want to buckle up for this part, because this is where we leave the world of theoretical physics and jump headfirst into claims about ancient history and alien technology. Because according to this theory, none of these ideas are actually new. In fact, they were known thousands of years ago. Remember how we just said domes are great at accumulating energy? Well, this theory claims that's exactly why ancient temples were built with domes, but not for us. The claim is that an alien race, called the Apiaxans, built these temples to harvest a very specific kind of energy, the powerful emotional energy given off by human worshippers.
And the main piece of evidence that's presented for this wild claim is an artifact that's been interpreted as a kind of ancient comic strip. The source claims it clearly shows humans inside a temple giving off their energy in the form of snakes, and on the other side of a portal, you can see what look like Epixorians and other aliens receiving that energy.
And just to round out the physics side of things, the theory even has an explanation for radiation. It suggests that some snakes are, for lack of a better word, poisonous. These are the radiation snakes. They're destructive. They can actually bite and break apart other, stable tangles, which would explain why radiation is so damaging at a fundamental level. So, let's just imagine for a second that humanity could actually master this beyond quantum understanding of reality. What could we do with it? This is where the theory goes full sci-fi and suggests it could all become science fact. I mean, if this is all true, the technologies would be absolutely staggering. We're talking about replicators that can create any object you want out of thin air, recyclers that can break down any waste perfectly, and, most incredible of all, something called a health capsule that could repair any organ, any cell in your body and lead to a dramatic extension of our lifespans.
And when I say dramatic, I'm not kidding. The theory claims this technology could allow human beings to live in perfect health for at least 1,500 years.
How could that even be possible? The source uses a really great analogy. Think about our physical bodies like a web page. If you want to change something on the web page, you don't mess around with the page you see on the screen, right? No, you go into the underlying HTML code and you change it there. The idea is that the health capsule would do the same thing. It would edit our body's fundamental snake code at that beyond quantum level, and the changes would just appear instantly in our physical bodies. And the replicator? Same exact principle. It would take something like a pile of dirty laundry, break it down into its base particles, and then just rewrite their snake code to rearrange them into something totally different, like a hamburger.
The theory goes on to predict that once humanity adopts this knowledge, it would kick off a whole new era for civilization. Communication, using those entanglement principles, would become truly instantaneous. And that would eventually lead to full sensory holographic presence, letting you feel like you're anywhere with anyone in a way that's completely indistinguishable from reality.
And it all comes back to this one single, absolutely mind-bending idea from the source material. The idea that at the deepest, most fundamental level, everything is made of the exact same stuff. It's just arranged differently. The incredibly complex world we see all around us is just a surface-level illusion, an expression of a much, much simpler code underneath it all. And that just leaves us with this one final, massive question. Forget for a second whether you think it's possible or not. Just think about the implication. If you really could program matter itself, if you could change the code of reality as easily as we change the code of a website, what would you build? What would you change? What kind of world would we choose to create? It's a pretty powerful thought to end on.